He handed her divorce papers the same day she told him she was pregnant. She thought it was the worst day of her life, until 5 years later, he returned, not for her, but for their daughter's money. What would you do if the man who abandoned you tried to profit off your child? Laura always dreamed of performing on stage, her heart ignited by the lights, the applause, and the thrill of acting. From a young age, she dedicated herself to rehearsals with her local drama club, envisioning a future filled with artistic success. But life, as it often does, had other plans. It was during this time that she met Michael, a charming and successful man who swept her off her feet. Their connection was immediate, and soon, their whirlwind romance led to marriage. However, as the years went by, Michael's controlling nature began to surface. He made it clear that for them to have a future together, Laura's acting dreams would need to be set aside. Torn between her love for him and her passion for acting, Laura made the difficult choice to put her dreams on hold, focusing instead on building a life with Michael. As the years passed, their marriage experienced its ups and downs, but nothing could have prepared Laura for the moment when she found out she was pregnant. The excitement of the new life growing inside her should have been the happiest news she could share with Michael. But instead, her joy was overshadowed by a shocking and devastating reality. Michael handed her divorce papers, shattering her world in an instant. The emotional weight of that moment left Laura questioning everything, yet it also marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would test her strength and resilience. Little did she know, the journey ahead would be anything but easy. The atmosphere in the kitchen was thick with tension, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound as Laura stood there, holding the pregnancy test in her pocket. The test was positive, a joyful confirmation of the life growing inside her, a moment she had been eagerly anticipating. She had even bought a small chocolate cake, her favorite, a small token of celebration to share with Michael. However, when he entered, his expression was anything but joyous. Michael, who once seemed so charming and full of promise, now looked worn down, his face clouded with an emotion that had no place in the happy moment she had imagined. Before Laura could even say a word, he placed the divorce papers on the table and declared, "I want a divorce, Laura." His voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. The words hit her like a physical blow, the shock rendering her speechless. What had happened? Why now, after everything they had been through? She managed to ask, her voice trembling, "What? Why now?" Michael's response was just as emotionless. "It's not sudden, Laura. I'd been thinking about this for a long time." She felt the weight of his words sink in, a heavy realization that the life they had built together was unraveling before her eyes. Her mind raced, questioning everything. Had she missed the signs, or was this truly an abrupt decision? She couldn't help but ask, "Is there someone else?" But Michael, refusing to engage, simply replied, "Just let's get divorced." In that instant, the joy of her pregnancy evaporated, replaced by a deep, soul-crushing heartbreak. She had imagined this moment so differently. Instead of celebrating new life, she was faced with the shattering of her own. It was as though the room grew colder, the once warm air now suffocating. Her hands trembled as she clutched the divorce papers, unable to even comprehend the words on the page. The shock of it all left her paralyzed. The future she had once envisioned, one where she and Michael raised a family together, building a life of love and shared dreams, vanished in an instant. Laura stood in the kitchen, the cake still on the counter, untouched and irrelevant now. Her heart raced with a mixture of disbelief and confusion, unable to grasp the gravity of the situation. As Michael turned and walked away without a second glance, her mind lingered on his coldness. Was this truly the man she had once loved, or had she been blinded by an illusion of a perfect future? The weight of his departure began to sink in, the isolation settling like a stone in her chest. It was not just the end of her marriage, it was the loss of a life she had believed in, a dream that was now slipping away from her fingertips. Tears stung her eyes, but they did not fall. Instead, she stood there, empty, as the reality of the moment continued to envelop her. But in the silence, amidst the devastation, something inside Laura began to shift. Despite the crushing weight of heartbreak, she found herself slowly reaching for a small glimmer of hope, the life growing inside her. This child, a part of her, was her anchor, a reminder that there was still something worth fighting for. She couldn't change what had just happened, but she could still choose how to move forward. Laura didn't know what the future would hold, but as she stood in the kitchen, the weight of the divorce papers in her hands, she realized one undeniable truth: she was no longer just a woman who had been betrayed. She was about to become a mother, and nothing, not even the heartbreak she was experiencing, could take that away. This child would be her strength, her reason to push forward into the unknown. The first few months after Michael left were some of the hardest of Laura's life. The exhaustion from sleepless nights began to take a toll on her body, but it was nothing compared to the emotional drain. Each day was a battle to maintain normalcy for Emily, to hide the pain she was feeling inside. The financial strain, the emotional upheaval, and the responsibilities that came with raising a child on her own were overwhelming. There was no one to share the load with, no one to turn to for support. Laura had always been independent, but now, every decision, every task, from paying the bills to comforting Emily during the night, fell squarely on her shoulders. She had no choice but to push forward, day after day. Her social life had withered, and the loneliness crept in with every passing day. She would often find herself sitting on the couch after Emily went to bed, the silence of the house deafening. The dreams she once had for herself, the life she had imagined when she was younger, seemed a distant memory now. The stage, the applause, the career she had sacrificed to raise a family, those dreams seemed impossible in her new reality. Yet, despite the emotional and physical toll, Laura was determined to keep moving forward. Emily, her little girl, became the anchor that kept her from completely sinking. Laura had always known that motherhood would be challenging, but nothing had prepared her for the weight of it. Still, every smile from Emily, every hug, every word of encouragement from her daughter was enough to make Laura push through the darkness. Emily's laughter filled the empty spaces in the house, and it was her innocent joy that gave Laura hope. Laura learned to live for her daughter, to sacrifice her own needs and desires in favor of Emily's. But that didn't mean Laura didn't feel the weight of those sacrifices. It was in the quiet moments, when she watched her daughter play or heard her excitedly talking about her day at school, that the emotional burden became clear. She had given up so much, and yet, Emily's presence was a constant reminder that it was all worth it. Her daughter was her strength, her reason to keep going, even when the world felt overwhelming. Over time, Laura found ways to rebuild her life, piece by piece. It was not easy, and there were many setbacks along the way, but slowly, she regained her sense of self. The process was gradual, but with every small victory, finding a new job, making new friends, learning to enjoy her own company again, Laura began to see that while her life was not the one she had envisioned, it was still meaningful. She had a new purpose, Emily. The strength that Laura had always held within her began to emerge in unexpected ways. She became more resourceful, more resilient. There were days when the weight of her responsibilities seemed unbearable, but she never let it show. She never allowed herself to give in to the despair that threatened to swallow her. She fought for Emily's future, and in doing so, she fought for her own. Through it all, Laura learned the power of resilience. Every challenge she faced, every setback, only made her stronger. And as she looked at Emily, she realized that despite the hardships, she had created a life for them both that was full of love and meaning. When Michael returned into Laura's life, it was like a storm had suddenly broken through the calm that she had fought so hard to establish. His reappearance was neither expected nor wanted, yet there he was, standing before her, wearing the same confident, smug look that had once made her fall in love with him. However, now that same look felt like a threat, like he was trying to reclaim the power he had once held over her life. It was clear that he hadn't changed much at all, only that time had not been kind to him. The first time she saw him after all these years, he seemed almost unfamiliar. His clothes were disheveled, his face rough with neglect, and there was a strange arrogance in his voice as he tried to reinsert himself into their world. He wanted to see Emily, as though the 5 years of absence hadn't mattered, as though his neglect of his daughter could be erased with a few words. Laura could hardly contain her anger. Her mind raced with memories of how he had walked out on her, and now here he was, trying to pick up where he had left off. He didn't deserve to be a part of Emily's life, and yet, he was pushing to do just that. His manipulation was unmistakable, as he tried to impose his presence into Emily's world, promising all kinds of things, none of which had any real foundation. It was as though he thought he could simply waltz back in and pick up the role of a father as if time had stood still. Laura, on the other hand, was no longer the naive woman who had once hoped for his love. She had grown stronger, more cautious, and fiercely protective of her daughter. The anger that rose in her when Michael tried to take control of their lives was palpable. She had worked too hard to create a stable and loving home for Emily to let him destroy it again. The tension between Laura and Michael was almost unbearable. Every time they spoke, it felt like the air between them thickened. Michael would try to convince her that he had changed, that he wanted to be a father to Emily. Laura, with her emotions torn between the anger of his past betrayal and a flicker of hope that perhaps he might change, struggled to decide whether to let him back into their lives. But every time she saw him, she was reminded of his selfishness and disregard for the family they could have been. Emily, innocent and unaware of the deeper currents of their interactions, was curious about her father. Laura, in her most protective instincts, shielded her daughter from the emotional turmoil. Emily's excitement to see her father was met with Laura's cold restraint. As the days passed, Michael's presence lingered, but it was clear that the man he once was still buried beneath layers of self-interest and emotional manipulation. Laura's internal struggle was intense. Should she allow her daughter to get to know the man who had once abandoned them, or should she continue to protect her from the consequences of his neglect? Forgiveness felt impossible, but the desire for Emily to have a relationship with her father was equally complicated. Yet deep down, Laura knew that she had to keep fighting, not just for herself, but for Emily's future. As Michael's visits became more frequent, Laura's resolve only grew stronger. She would not allow the past to repeat itself. She had rebuilt her life from the ground up, and she would not let Michael's selfishness destroy what they had. In the end, her love for Emily was what guided her, the fierce, unyielding love that every mother knows will go to any lengths to protect her child. As the battle between them continued, Laura understood that this was a fight not only for their present but for the future she would create for Emily. With each passing day, Laura felt the tension rising, but she knew one thing for certain: she would not let him take control again. The road ahead was uncertain, but her heart was clear. Her daughter's safety and happiness came first, no matter the cost. As Emily's acting career flourished, the allure of fame began to overshadow the quiet life she once cherished. Her performances garnered critical acclaim, and soon, she was gracing the covers of magazines and attending high-profile events. The spotlight, however, brought with it a host of challenges. The demands of her career intensified, leaving little room for the simple joys of childhood. The constant travel, long hours on set, and public scrutiny began to take a toll on her well-being. Despite the outward glamour, Emily found herself yearning for the normalcy she had left behind. The reality of fame was far different from the fantasy she had once imagined. The late nights, the pressure to constantly perform, and the lack of a private life made her feel like a commodity rather than a person. As her face became more recognizable, the weight of the world seemed to settle on her shoulders. Amidst this whirlwind, Michael re-entered their lives, not as a father seeking reconciliation, but as an opportunist aiming to capitalize on Emily's newfound fame. He began to assert claims over her earnings, demanding a share of the profits from her acting endeavors. His actions were not those of a concerned parent, but of someone seeking to exploit his daughter's success for personal gain. This intrusion into their lives was not just a financial dispute, it was a violation of the boundaries that Laura had worked so hard to establish. Michael's presence felt like a shadow, looming over their lives, threatening the hard-earned peace they had built. His sense of entitlement, born from his own past failures, made him believe that Emily's success was something he had a right to benefit from. Laura, ever the protector, confronted Michael with unwavering resolve. She reminded him of his abandonment and the years he had chosen to remain absent. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of years of sacrifice and love. She made it clear that Emily's earnings were hers alone, and Michael had no claim to them. This confrontation was not just about money, It was about asserting control over their lives and protecting Emily from exploitation. Every word Laura spoke was filled with a mother's fierce love, her determination to ensure that Emily's future would not be shaped by the same selfishness that had marked Michael's past. In the face of Michael's attempts to reassert his presence and claim, Laura stood firm. She sought legal counsel to ensure that Emily's financial interests were safeguarded. She also enrolled Emily in programs that emphasized the importance of education and personal growth, ensuring that her career did not overshadow her development as an individual. Laura's actions were a testament to her dedication as a mother and her commitment to providing Emily with a balanced and fulfilling life. Emily's childhood was precious, and Laura would not allow it to be stolen by the demands of an industry or the greed of a man who had no place in their lives. As Emily navigated the complexities of fame, Laura remained her steadfast ally. She encouraged Emily to pursue her passions, but always with an emphasis on balance and well-being. Together, they faced the challenges of the entertainment industry, with Laura serving as Emily's anchor in a world that often seemed unmoored. Their journey was not just about achieving success, but about maintaining integrity and ensuring that fame did not come at the cost of their values and happiness. Through it all, Laura knew that as long as Emily had her by her side, she would not be lost in the storm of fame's demands. The legal battle that unfolded in the courtroom was a pivotal moment in the lives of Laura and Emily. As Michael continued to assert his claims over Emily's earnings, the stakes of the case grew ever higher. The courtroom became a battleground where emotions ran high, and the future of Emily's well-being hung in the balance. Laura's resolve was unwavering as she fought to protect her daughter from the man who had abandoned them and now sought to exploit Emily's newfound fame. The legal proceedings were long and grueling. Lawyers for both sides presented their arguments, with Michael's attorney arguing that as Emily's biological father, he had the right to a portion of her earnings. The atmosphere in the courtroom was charged with tension as Michael, once again, tried to impose his will on their lives. He attempted to play the role of a concerned father, but the evidence painted a different picture. His years of absence from Emily's life and his manipulative attempts to claim financial benefits painted him as an opportunist rather than a loving parent. On the other side, Laura's legal team presented a compelling case for why Michael had no right to Emily's earnings. They focused not only on Michael's absence but also on his lack of involvement in Emily's upbringing. Laura had been the one to support Emily through every hardship, to guide her, and to help her navigate the complexities of fame. The courtroom was a space where Laura's love for her daughter was put on full display, and it was clear that she was not backing down. After what seemed like an eternity, the judge delivered the final verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the judge ruled in Laura's favor. Michael's attempts to claim a share of Emily's earnings were rejected, and the court reaffirmed Laura's sole legal rights over her daughter's finances and future. The sense of relief that washed over Laura was palpable. This victory was not just a legal one, it was a reaffirmation of her role as Emily's protector, the one person who had fought tirelessly to shield her from the dangers of exploitation. Michael, facing defeat, had no choice but to accept the ruling. His attempts to manipulate the situation had failed, and he was left with nothing but his own bitterness. The courtroom drama ended with his defeat, but the victory belonged to Laura. She had not only won the case, but she had also secured a future for Emily that would be free from the toxic influence of Michael. With the legal battle behind them, Laura could now focus on giving Emily the life she deserved, one filled with love, security, and the promise of a bright future ahead. As the journey that Laura and Emily had undertaken began to settle, the lessons learned from their hardships stood as a testament to their strength and resilience. Throughout the trials they faced, Laura's unwavering devotion to her daughter had been the foundation of their survival. From the heartbreak of betrayal to the empowerment found in legal battles, the challenges shaped them, but they never weakened their bond. In fact, each obstacle only served to deepen their understanding of what truly matters in life: love, protection, and unwavering support. Looking forward, the future for Laura and Emily now shines with promise. Emily, having emerged from the shadows of exploitation, is free to carve out her own identity, without the looming threats of manipulation or control. Laura's fight for her daughter's safety and happiness has proven successful, and in doing so, She has not only protected Emily but also secured a life full of opportunities, joy, and potential. The strength of motherly love, coupled with the resilience they both displayed, is the greatest gift Laura could have given Emily. Together, they stand not just as survivors, but as empowered individuals ready to face the world with hope and strength. Their story, from betrayal to victory, shows that no matter the struggle, the future can always be brighter when love and resilience guide the way.